Welcome to the Radical Responsibility Revolution podcast. This is where we are transforming lives, inspiring you to reclaim your health, your wealth, and the power of your mind. Here we share actionable insights, inviting you to turn inwards and design your life of purpose and abundance. Welcome back to another episode of Radical Responsibility Revolution. And today's guest is one of those women who quietly dismantles hustle culture, which you know I love. And she doesn't even raise her voice like I do. Wendy Huson is the founder of Uplevel Wellness and a former corporate leader who took a bold left turn away from relentless travel and burnout and toward building a business rooted in health, identity, and self-responsibility. What makes Wendy's work different is that she doesn't start with diets, workout plans, or willpower, which never works. She starts with who you believe yourself to be. Because when you change your identity, your habits stop feeling like chores and start feeling like truth, which that's what we all want anyways. Wendy works primarily with high achieving women who've done everything right, yet find themselves exhausted, dysregulated, and stuck in that start over Monday loop. Her work brings health back to its rightful place, not as an optional add on, but as the foundation for success, leadership, and a life that actually feels good to live. So, this is a conversation about radical responsibility, nervous system wisdom, saying no without apology, and how feminine energy changes everything, starting with how we treat ourselves. So I'm so excited to have this conversation. Wendy, welcome. And I love having women that are supporting women on this program because it is so essential that we begin to understand supporting ourselves is where we want to be. So I want to ask a question before we dive into your story. What is the thing that you are the most proud of in your life? And it can't be family and creating children because we have a tendency to say that's what we're proud of. And we all have had that experience. And yet, what is the most important event or experience or impact that you've made on the world that you are the most proud of?
Thank you, Debbie. I'm excited to be here and share with your listeners. It is a great question, and I'm sure there's lots of ways that I could answer that. But actually, one thing is coming up for me, and it was a conversation with my husband in our kitchen. And I don't even remember exactly when it was, but I know our boys were pretty little. And so we were in that morning of like trying to get the kids out the door, trying to get everybody fed and dressed and to daycare so that we could start our days and our jobs. And it was just a particularly hard morning. And my husband said, it's just the way it is. This is just what happens. This is just what life is like when kids are little like this. And we just have to survive it. And I remember just having this moment of like, no, that's not how this is going to go. That's not how our family is going to operate. That's not how we're going to spend their childhoods. And when they're really little and saying, well, we just have to survive it because it's hard. And yes, of course it's hard. And there's a lot of things about having really little kids that's hard. But I think that was really a defining moment for me when I said, you know what, I'm not willing to accept that this is just the way it is and that we can't do anything different or anything better. And again, I don't know exactly even where that was in the timeline of things, but I just know that that will always be a moment when I said, hey, we can do something different. And that has since translated into me wanting to really empower other women to have the same type of stance for their life and to be able to say, no, I'm not going to just do this because this is what everybody says that I'm supposed to do or how life is supposed to be. I'm going to do something different because I know that that's what we're supposed to do in life.
I'm getting goosebumps over that answer because it's so key to everything, no matter what age, no matter what circumstance. I remember my 84-year-old mother saying in her 70s that this is how it has to be. And for women to hear just a moment in time that you had that download and it can shift, that intersection can shift your entire life, which it has on so many levels. And yet you did take this trajectory like we as women do, work hard, struggle, burn ourselves out. So you didn't just tweak your career, you took a full left turn. So let's talk about how that was one of those moments where you said it doesn't have to be like this, because that is the messaging that we get. We get this playbook that says that's how it works. And yet I believe that women are waking up all over the planet saying it doesn't have to be that way. So let's take a moment when you realized that living wasn't sustainable anymore in that old model and you decided to tweak where you're at now.
Sure. So my career was, it was just definitely on a path of everything was going well for all intensive purposes. And I liked I was good at what I was doing. I wouldn't say that I necessarily loved it anymore. I was good at what I was doing. My boss would have done anything to keep me, and he literally told me that. I had all kinds of flexibility. I was paid well, but I knew there was two things that were happening. One was that I was traveling a whole bunch and going to Europe 6 or 8 times a year away from the family, and it was becoming a big stress. And the other thing was, I just knew that I was called to do more, and I didn't know what that was, but I knew that the job that I was in and the path that I was on was not all there was for me. And so the intersection of that being where I was in my life, with my second son was born and I just wanted to lose some weight, and that went well, and then other people were asking me what I was doing. At the time, it felt like they were not related at all, but now I think they very much were. And the reason that I was put in that spot at that time was because I was there to be able to help other women get out of that place. And so for a long time I said, well, I can help other people lose weight with the program that I did, but I'm not a health professional. So it still didn't feel like it was completely congruent. I just had left my job because I knew that wasn't where I was supposed to be. And I was helping other people lose weight because I had a way to do that in a vehicle that was working. But it wasn't until I realized, oh, hey, these things can come together, and I can use the things that I was good at in my professional career: team building, the motivating, the inspiring people, the bringing people together towards a common cause, with my new passion, which was helping women to live their life differently and take care of themselves better and prioritize themselves. When I brought those two things together, it was like the light bulb came on of, oh, okay, I was put in this position so that I could have these experiences to help other women say, you don't just have to keep going down this path because you don't know what else to do. And it is okay to take a left turn to say, okay, I'm going to try something different. And I do think that our culture is getting more and more accepting of that. And especially women are feeling less like, oh gosh, I'm a failure if I don't keep going down this high corporate path. And there's more and more people that are like, it's okay. You want to do the right thing for you and for your family. And there feels like there's more non-traditional ways to be able to support a family financially, which I think is awesome. And I love that people can get more creative now and not feel like the corporate ladder is the only option, because at that time that's what it felt like to me, and it was a lot for me to say, wait a second, it doesn't have to be that way.
I love that so much because women have gotten this imprinting that we do have to do it a specific way. What I love about your story, and I hear this so many times, is you had this epiphany, a download, something came from spirit. You had this sense that there was more than what you were seeing, and you were really good at it, which is another thing I hear all the time. I'm really good at it. I'm making the bucks. I'm not terribly unhappy. So I should probably just keep going. When the reality is, when we start to listen to our, I call it our intuition, whatever version of that word we want to use, but also that you didn't have to have it all figured out. I think this is one of our big bugaboos as women, is that we think we have to have it all figured out before we start. Lean into that for a minute and share some of the fears that came up. Women are going through this as we speak all over the world. They want something more for their lives, and yet they haven't figured it out, and they even feel the whisper. But there's this part that says, you don't know what you're doing. You don't have a path. You don't have a plan. And so don't. So tell me some of those ways you were able to just keep moving through with trust or faith that propelled you.
Sure. I A friend of mine said to me when I was going through all this, because I was in this point in my career where I was like, I was just talking about this to anybody that would listen of like, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do because I know that I can't keep going where I'm going, but I can't figure out what else I'm supposed to do. And he said to me, why would you ever leave your job? You're making good money. Your boss told you that you could just stay there forever. They will do anything to keep you. Why would you ever leave that? And I come back to that conversation a lot because in some ways, for all intents and purposes, it does sound crazy. But I kept telling my husband, and I continue to tell him all the time, I just know that I would have been miserable. And I just know that I would have kept saying, yeah, okay, this is safe, but it's not where I'm meant to be. And I know that I'm supposed to be doing something else. And there was something that was just tugging at me to say, this is not all of it. This is not the only thing. And there's a reason that I couldn't find any other job that felt like it was the right fit because that wasn't where I was supposed to go. And I would like to tell you that I was like super brave with all of these big decisions about what I did. But really, what happened was my husband and I decided that I would leave my job at the end of my first son's kindergarten year because I also felt strongly that I did not want him to be in full-time daycare anymore. And so that was our timeline. Looking back, we were absolutely not prepared for that financially or probably in a whole bunch of other ways. But we felt strongly that we didn't want him to be doing that anymore. And we felt strongly that it was the best thing for our family if we tried a different path. And so really our timeline for the last couple of years has been that time when my older son got finished kindergarten to the time that my younger son started kindergarten. And it was one of those deals where I couldn't really get a job, any other job in the meantime, because I did not want to put them back in daycare. So the risk we were taking was the path did not go like I thought it was going to go. It didn't all work out like everybody says all these things are going to work out and you're going to make all this money and it's going to be amazing in a matter of weeks. It didn't happen, but we were fine. We were taken care of, and we knew two things. I knew two things deep down. One, that I was not meant to stay in my job any longer that I was in before, and that I would be miserable if I would have kept doing it. And two, I did not want my boys to be in full-time daycare from sunup to sundown. So as long as I knew that those were our two things that we were really holding on to, I knew that everything else was going to be okay. And along the way, in the couple of years that almost 3 years it's been since then, we've been taken care of. Everything has worked out. It's all been fine. And I learned a whole bunch about myself along the way. So no, it didn't go like I had planned. No, I don't feel like I had this big, grand path that I was like, okay, this is exactly how this is going to go. But I knew that I keep saying to my husband, we will never look back and regret the decisions that we made for those reasons. And so as long as we stay rooted in that, everything else is going to work out okay.
I always say you want to make God laugh, get a plan.
Yeah.
Like that's what's so hilarious. Because if we have those intentions, like you set those intentions about your time frame and about what you desired for your family, I
Mhm.
say that the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, rearranges the entire universe to make that happen for us. And it generally does not look like what we think the plan should look like because frankly, we don't have the capacity to see all of the entire universe. That's so beautiful to tell women if you have an intention and you just keep focused on whatever that is and you walk towards it, then the path lights itself up. The other thing that I find so fascinating is that women are becoming the largest demographic for opening businesses, becoming
Hmm.
entrepreneurs. Over 400,000 women left the job last year. Primarily, one of the reasons was childcare. And this is what's so interesting is that we've been given this playbook that says if you want to have it all, basically you got to put the kids in daycare. Like that's
Mhm.
not true, especially given this opportunity to become an entrepreneur. I love that so much for women. Then you can create your world. So
Mhm.
talk about that freedom that you feel being an entrepreneur. Maybe it's not exactly how you designed it, but now you're in this space where you get to be and have the freedom that you choose. And it may look like busyness sometimes, and yet what a beautiful space that is when I see women create entrepreneurship. So talk about that journey and what that feels like and what your freedom feels like right now.
Absolutely. My younger son started kindergarten in the fall. So now I have that while they're at school, time freedom. But what I've learned over the past couple of years of juggling him being in preschool and part-time mom, part-time school was just to be really intentional with the time that I did have. But I'm also learning that that doesn't necessarily have to mean being super uber duper productive at my desk, grinding out every single second that they are away. Because that also is not a recipe for success. And so I'm learning how to work with my energy, work with my time throughout the day and say, okay, this is my best time and this is when I'm going to do these things. And then, okay, I need a break usually by this time. So this is when I'm going to go schedule my coffee dates. And what I'm really learning is that by the time that they get home at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, I'm tapped out anyway. And so it's nice that I don't have to be like, oh, well, I have to work until 5 o'clock because that's when my boss wants me to. I can say, you know what,
Mhm.
I'm done. And they're here. And so now we can have snacks and go do whatever it is we're going to do. And I don't have to feel guilty about it. And I, what one big thing I've learned since leaving my job is like, I had such guilt feeling like I had to be stuck at a certain time at my desk, even though my boss said, don't worry about it. I'm not concerned about how many hours you're working, but I still felt that obligation to somebody else. So when that obligation to somebody else is gone, to me, that was a huge freeing thing to be able to say, you know, yes, I get to pick what I am going to do. And sometimes that's going to mean resting or taking a nap or going for a walk, because that's also really important as part of me as a mom and a wife and a person and everything else that I have to have that time as well. And sometimes I get creative and I don't necessarily work in those exact hours because I can
Mhm.
do that depending on what our schedule looks like for the week. And it's nice to just be able to have that variety.
I love that because it's so true that we as women have rhythms. We have cycles for crying out loud. So we have rhythms that we live within. And when we honor those, we are so much more productive. I'm not a big fan of that word because it infers that we need to be grinding away, which is, you just said it so beautifully, as you're taking care of yourself, you're listening to yourself, and you're moving in a way that is very fluid and incorporates you, your family, and your work as a holistic experience. It isn't this slot if I have to be at my desk, I'd have to do with my boss. So I think that's so beautiful. I'm imagining that this is now translated also into how you're helping women with their learning about identity as opposed to habits. I love that defining situation that you're creating. I hate the word of habits, change a habit. It's like, what do you want to do? How do you want to be in the world? So, share a little bit about your philosophy, since this is now, I would imagine, being incorporated into how you help women and what that looks like.
Sure. So my journey, so actually my weight loss journey was over the summer of 2020. And so it was literally one of those like I was pregnant and then nobody saw me for 4 or 5 months and then all of a sudden I showed up 50 pounds lighter. It's like, wow, that was magic.
The big
um,
reveal.
but what was so interesting about
Um,
that, and I don't even know that I fully grasped it at the time, but I was so uncomfortable with the fact that then people were saying to me, "Oh, you look wonderful. You're such an inspiration and it's so great that you've done this," and asking me questions, but I was so uncomfortable still because my body had changed and my routines had changed because I had enough, because the plan that I was doing worked well enough that I stuck with it because I was getting the results. But my mind hadn't changed. I still looked in the mirror and I was like, where did this body come from? How in the world did this happen?
yeah.
Like, who is this? But it wasn't until I started to embrace, like, be proud of yourself, be proud of what you've done, be proud of the fact that people are telling you that you're an inspiration, because then that's helping them potentially make some changes in their life as well. And I started coaching with a woman, and she really gave me this identity language because I didn't have it for myself for a long time. And I couldn't even tell you what was happening within my mind. I just knew that I had this transformation. I wanted to keep this transformation. So I was going to do everything I could to stay in that lane, even though it felt super uncomfortable for a long time. But what she said was she's a coach and she's a business coach, but she teaches all about identity. And the example that she uses was obviously applicable to me and my business when she said a person can lose weight, but they won't keep it off until they become a different person and accept a different identity than the person who gained it in the first place. So that's when it clicked to me of like, okay, I get it now. I get that you can't stay the same person who gained the weight and try and be the person who loses the weight. So that is really translated into our philosophy and how we help people, especially women, because we are so in our heads and we have thoughts running all the time. And most likely a lot of those thoughts are, they can be self-degrading and they can be negative, and we can have a lot of thoughts about the patterns in our life, even though they may or may not really even be conscious thoughts. And we may not necessarily see ourselves as the person who regularly goes to the gym or orders these things. And the chances are you're not going to stick with the new habits, because a habit can become a habit, but it's not going to stick around if you don't feel like that habit is part of who you are. And so that's what we like to do, is start by helping women say, okay, what is the picture I want to, let's paint the picture of the person that I want to become. Let's understand where I am now. And then we can work on the habits to get from point A to point B. But otherwise, we're just trying to white knuckle it. We're just trying to use enough willpower to try and get through the next thing. But if we're not actually transforming from the inside out, these things aren't going to stick.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I always talk about being who you want to become now in order for that person to show up. Einstein that said you can't correct a problem with the mind within which it was created, because
Mhm.
that's what we do. And I love that you had that insight and now you're helping other women see that as well. I want to talk about high achieving women. So, what is it that is causing this angst or disconnect for high achieving women, particularly for you when you see these clients?
I think it goes back to what you were saying of like the idea of we can have it all. And I think sometimes those of us who are successful in many parts of our life, that comes with a certain amount of just keep going, just keep grinding, just keep doing it. And then you'll prove to everybody that you can do it all. And yeah, you can do all the things. And and a lot of us have examples of that in our life. Maybe it's our mothers or maybe it's not, but I think there's this culture of like, yeah, you can do all the things as long as you have a, you're just doing, and you just keep going and you keep going and you keep going and you keep going. And eventually that runs out, and eventually we can't do that anymore. And I think that, so I think there's two parts of that being, we understand those women, especially because everybody on my team have been or are those people, and we're recovering achievers of trying to do all the things. And so we get where people are in that sense, and we get where women especially are. I think that the thing that when it comes to their health, especially, these types of women are so used to just like, well, I can do that, I can do that, so they just try and cram another thing in and cram another thing in. I'll find 5 minutes to go work out now, and I'm going to do this, and I'm just going to cram something else in. Eventually it doesn't work, and you can't cram any more things into your life. And even if you can try and fit that trip to the gym in, chances are you're not going to get the results you need, because you haven't done anything about your nutrition. You haven't done anything about the chronic stress that you're living in. Your body is in total fight or flight mode all the time. So yes, maybe you exercise 3 times this week, but you're not looking at the whole picture, because you're just trying to like think, well, I'll just cram that one thing in and it's going to solve everything else. So I think that it's important for these women to take a moment to say, okay, wait a second. How can I take a pause and decide what's most important in my life, so that I can take care of myself in a way that then supports all the rest of these things? Because most likely she's trying to compensate for something else by trying to do all of the things versus just saying, wait a second, we don't have to do all of that. we're going to take a step back and we're going to decide what's really most important for all of us, because most likely you don't really have to do all the things.
Exactly. So self-care fits into this organic, holistic approach. So talk about that, because that would seem to me that would be very high on the list of priorities that you're asking your clients to list for themselves. I hate the word list, but I'm going to use that for people understanding. But it really is so essential to what is happening. And high achieving women don't necessarily pay attention to that. And I think one of the also a misconception is self care is like going and getting a massage. So, talk about what your versions of self care look like and how you incorporate that and how you bring that into the conversation with your clients.
Sure. So one of the coaches on my team, her name is Ray, and she's amazing. And one of the things she really teaches a lot about, because this has been a big part of her journey, is nervous system regulation. And
Mm.
this is not something that I have ever said, oh, yeah, this was a problem for me. But I know that it absolutely was and is. And if I don't pay attention to it, can get out of control really quickly. And to me, that's like the first place of self-care, because you're right, we can go get a massage and we can go get a pedicure, and that's great. But if you're then like scuttling off to 12 other things after that, and the whole time you're there, you're thinking about something and you're on your phone and you're calling somebody else, like it's not really self-care. So to me, and what we like to teach and where we start with our program is like, let's start by pausing. Let's start by noticing what type of patterns do we have in terms of nervous system regulation. Are we constantly in fight or flight mode? Are we constantly in overdrive? Is your cortisol off the charts? Are you just stressed? Because you can't show up for anybody, including yourself, if your body literally thinks that it's in danger all of the time. And so some things that have been helpful for me in my journey are things like getting up early before my family to have some quiet time, going through some of the miracle morning exercises and tweaking those for myself. And journaling has been helpful for me. And but then Ray also coaches some wonderful things as far as breath work and ways that we can just calm ourselves down, calm our nervous system. And I think for my journey, the way that that has continued to show up is just I now am a lot more aware of the thoughts that spiral in my head that then lead to arguments with my husband or snapping at my kids or emotional eating or whatever it is. I'm more aware of these patterns now. So now I can say, okay, wait a second. This is going badly. I need to go outside for a walk or go get some fresh air versus heading to the pantry to see what thing I can grab, or versus going into a conversation that I know I'm going to snap at somebody, because starting by being more regulated myself then trickles into a whole bunch of other places. So I think that's where our definition of self-care starts, with just being more aware of the chronic stress that so many of us have in our life and trying to de-escalate that before we do anything else.
That's so important because it seems like nervous system regulation is almost a buzzword these days. And women hear it and I think it bounces off of them. So I appreciate you sharing a little bit more definition, if you will, of fight or flight. We're just in constant fear of something. We don't even know what it is because our primal nature is it's the bear in the woods or the lion over there, but we live in this perpetual state of fear. And how can we expect this beautiful body that we live in to actually work at its highest potential when we are constantly driving a Ferrari? It can go 180 miles an hour, but when you are on that gas all the time, you have no reprieve. So that
Mm-hmm.
self-care is so important. I want to talk about this idea of creating these shifts in identity. So let's talk about how women are perceiving themselves when they come to you. They're high achievers and they're stressed out, but what are they looking for? Tell me some of the things that they come to you besides losing weight, because we know that that's just a symptom.
Right.
What are you finding that the underlying desire is that's being presented for them?
Sure. I think a lot of times weight becomes the final straw that they're like, okay, I just have to do something about this now because I no longer can fit into any of my clothes and I'm so uncomfortable that I have to do something. And unfortunately, that becomes the final trigger of like, okay, enough is enough because I'm physically uncomfortable. And that's definitely the way it was for me. And that's absolutely how all of this started. When on my own journey, it wasn't until about a month in when I finally leaned into the resources that were part of the program that I was on. And my coach kept saying, "Have you read the book? Have you read the book?" And I said, "Okay, fine. I'll just read the book so you stop asking me." And what happened was the first chapter is a self-assessment, and it goes through healthy body, healthy mind, healthy finances. And it was the healthy mind part when I'm bawling because I'm realizing, oh boy, yes, this started because my clothes didn't fit, but there's a whole lot more that's happening here that is spilling over into every other part of my life. And I think that's pretty true with most people that come to us is they don't even realize, they think it's the weight, they think it's the physical part, but they don't even realize that there's these other things that are going on, that they've been running on empty for a really long time, that they feel like they have to hold it all together for everybody else and that nobody can take care of them because they have to take care of everybody else. They feel like they're just going from one thing to the next constantly and don't have any space in their life to do anything that is their own. They have this job that they may or may not love. They have kids that they may say, well, how do I even be a successful mom and what does that look like? And there's so much pressure as a mom to be doing all of these things for my kids and making sure they're eating all the right things. They've just been piling all of these things on and they don't even realize that those are the things that are most likely resulting in a poor diet that she doesn't think about all day because she's just grabbing food that's available and whatever it is that the kids are going to eat because she hasn't had enough time or capacity to think about it, or just running from one thing to the next and grabbing something at the drive-through. And so the weight's the final straw, but then when what we hope that they can do and what we help them realize is there's a lot more here that is happening and that they need to take a moment to pause and say, nope, taking care of myself is not selfish, because if I take care of myself better, I'm going to be able to take care of everybody else better, and I'm going to be able to show up for everybody else better. And that's probably going to mean some sort of hard reset on some other things in my life as well. And really giving her permission to do that, because a lot of women don't think that they're worth that.
And I love this to close the loop of where we started with your story about your epiphany that this isn't quite right, but the conversation that your husband had with you is, well, this is just the way that it is. I want you to just declare that from the rooftops right now and give every woman that's listening to this permission. This is not how it has to be. This is your choice. So share some of the things you're providing this opportunity for women to make this shift for themselves because it doesn't have to be like this.
I think the first thing that is helpful for women is to who might have come to that point of like, okay, I need to do something different, is find other people who have had that same realization. Because if you're continuing to surround yourself with other people who are in the same rat race as you, and you're just spinning around and you're all spinning around together and you're all having wine on Friday night and saying, oh my gosh, my kids did this and this is my husband's terrible and this is awful. Like if you keep repeating the same story to yourself and to each other, then you're going to keep believing that same story. So I would say step one, if you feel called to get out of that rat race of life and hustle and struggle, find somebody else who is out of that as well, and surround yourself with them. A book that's been really impactful for me is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he gives the example of like, and I love this because I love that it's really easy to imagine. He said, if you want to become a jazz musician, go to a jazz club, go find a place where jazz musicians hang out, because you're most likely not going to just all of a sudden become a jazz musician if you're by yourself and you're not around anybody who does that. But if you go spend time with those people, then you're going to be more likely to feel normal about the change that you want to make, and you're going to be able to accept that pattern easier if you're around people who are already doing it. So we have a Facebook group, we have workshops that we do, other ways to connect with other women who just know that they want to do something different, because I think that helps to normalize the idea if you're around other people who are doing like what you want to do, because then you feel like, okay, this is more normal. I can do this. I can become a jazz musician if I'm around other jazz musicians. And it starts to feel like it's more attainable in that way. So I would say that's definitely a first step that is helpful.
That's so true because we are the five people that we hang around with. An
Yep.
environment, which is that's part of our environment, is so critical to our psyche, to our soul, to our beingness. So that is really sage wisdom. So I'll have all of your information to connect with you. You're available to
Absolutely. Yep.
speak, do workshops, and all of your information to connect with you will be in the show notes. And as I've asked everybody, it's 2026. It's already February. I can't even believe that. So, what is your best wisdom other than connect with other women, people that can support you? What is your best wisdom to women in general in this year of 2026? Because I believe that this is the rising of the feminine energy, not to take over, but to balance ourselves from all of
Mhm.
the masculine constructs that have been going on for generations. What is the best wisdom that you can give to a woman in this point on planet Earth in 2026?
I think what I would say is trust your gut, trust that
Mm,
feeling that you have. And whatever that is, whether that is that it's time for you to make some changes in your life, or it's time for you to change your job, or it's time for you to whatever it is, if you have that knowing, like you said, that didn't, it came from somewhere. And there's a reason that you have a feeling that you're supposed to maybe take a leap and do something a little bit different. And trust it and go for it and know that it's probably going to be scary and it's probably going to feel like you're out of control, but there's a reason that that is planted there, and the longer you ignore it, the harder it's going to be to change. And I think that, like I said, I think that our culture is changing, and I think that
mhm.
people are more open to whatever it is that works for each of us. And I've never really been someone that cared that much about what other people thought of me, but I think that that's also changing, that people are less judging and more accepting of whatever it is that works for you. That's the right thing to do. I think there's other conversations about truth and that sort of thing, but if there's something that's nagging at you to make changes in your life, go with it, because it's there for a reason.
Absolutely. What a great note to end on because that is so much about what this feminine energy is. That's intuition. And that intuition never lies if you're really listening to it. So
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for everything that you've shared. And I know that there's so many women out there that are in that space that you described, that they feel like their bodies have basically betrayed them when they are just betraying their own beingness. I'm loving the idea that you're talking about it from the stage because that's where we need to hear it the most. So I thank you so much for this opportunity and taking time out of your day to come share with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Debbie. It was fun to chat with you, and appreciate your opportunity as well.